Okay, our next unit for development is infancy and childhood. We're going to look at the physical, social, and cognitive development of infants and children. So physical development, let's talk about first. So maturation, the actual word maturation means our biological growth processes. And these are not influenced by experience. So these are things that just happen because you're getting older, okay? So this is not like our environment putting the pressure on us to develop, okay? So this is just, it happens biologically. It happens in sequence. Specifically motor development, it's universal. So every baby goes through this sequence of motor development. However, the timing of it is different for every child. So you will see that some children start to walk earlier or later. It just depends on the child. So let's look at this sequence. I'm going to warn you right now, we're going to watch some videos of Ella, my oldest daughter, but you're going to have to just ignore my mom voice, okay? Just ignore it. So here is, the first is rolling over. So this is usually around 3-4 months. So the next stage is sitting up unsupported. So this usually happens around 6 months. Some babies will do the tripod sit first. So they'll put their hands down in front of them in between their legs. But this is the fully sitting unsupported at 6 months. Then we have crawling. Sometimes babies scoot rather than actually crawl. This happens usually around 8 to 9 months. So here is Ella obviously to get into things because she is my monster child. Next is that beginning process of walking. Usually for most babies it happens around the age of 1. My kids have all walked before the age of 1, so you'll notice Ella's pretty young in this video. She's about 9 months, maybe a little bit older than that. My dad in the video too. So and then finally, walking independently. By 15 months, most babies are walking independently. Like I said, Ella walked before the age of 1. So again, she is about 10 months at this point. And like I said, all babies go through this same sequence. However, it happens at different stages or different times for different kids. So it really just depends on the child. Okay, so let's talk about cognitive development. So this is Jean Piaget. He is the leading psychologist in cognitive development in children. He believed that children moved through their childhood from stage to stage as they matured. And as they were exposed to different types of experiences. So he believed that development was in stages. Therefore, he is from the discontinuous understanding of development. So discontinuous is that there are distinct and separate stages that each child will go through. And in order to go into the next stage, you have to fully finish what you are doing in the stage before. Okay. There are starting and stopping points to these. Jean Piaget did ages, and you'll see that in the next few slides that we're going to go through. But basically the idea is you can't move from one stage to the next until you have mastered what is in that first stage. The continuous understanding of development is the idea that development happens gradually and it's ongoing, so you don't have to be in one stage or another in order for you to develop. It's happening all of the time. This is pretty much the understanding of psychology today, but we're going to look at a lot of different stages throughout this unit. So Piaget also came up with this idea of schemas. We've talked about these before, so this shouldn't be a surprise. Schemas are the mental molds that we pour our experiences into. Remember back before Christmas break when we talked about schema. Schema are the list of characteristics that allow us to know what makes an object, right? Or that allows us to understand whether or not it fits in that concept. Remember us talking about the idea of a shoe. What are the characteristics that make something a shoe? That is your schema. And then the perfect example of the schema would be your prototype. Okay, so that's what a schema is. Piaget believed that children created these schema, and that's how our cognitive development kind of started out. So how do we form these? He believed that as children experience new things, their schemas shape, and they can shape in one of two ways. The first is assimilation. This is interpreting new information. So basically the idea is we are taking and we are looking at this animal that we have here, and we are determining whether or not it is, we are deciding if it fits into an already existing schema. Okay, so it has 4 legs, it has a tail, it has this longer face. It's a horse. Okay, so we put it into the horse schema. However, we also can accommodate new information, or accommodation. This is adapting or changing our existing schema to incorporate the new information. So this would be putting the zebra in one schema because, it's a little bit different. It has stripes. Other horses don't have stripes. So the horses get their schema, the zebras get their own schema. Okay, so assimilation is putting it into an already existing folder. Accommodation is putting it in 2 separate folders. Okay, so another example of this, let's say you see an SUV for this first time. What are you going to do if you assimilate this new information? Well, you're going to probably put it into your schema for car. If you're going to accommodate this new information, you're like, oh, well, it's not really shaped the same way as a car. It's not really shaped the same way as a truck. So I'm going to create a new category for it. Okay, that's the idea of accommodation. Okay, so let's talk about Piaget's stages. So he has 4 different stages: sensori-motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational. Okay, so sensori-motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, formal operational. We're going to go through each one of these individually so that you can remember these. Sensori-motor is the very first stage. This one is somewhat easy to remember because it has what is happening in that stage in the word, senses. Think of what a baby does in this stage. They put everything in their mouth. They're touching things. They're looking around, right? They're hearing things. They're experiencing the world with their senses. So they're touching, they're putting things in their mouth. They're grasping onto things. They're feeling things. They're listening. They're watching. Those are the things that make up the sensory motor stage. In this stage, babies also develop object permanence around 9 months. So what this is, before this stage, before object permanence is developed, so before 9 months, if something goes out of sight for a baby, they truly believe that it's not there anymore. So for example, if I were to put my hands in front of my face, they think that you have disappeared. That's why peekaboo is so hilarious to babies who are under the age of 9 months. One of the steps of this particular stage, the sensory motor stage, is that they develop the idea that they can understand that if I put my hands in front of my face, I haven't completely disappeared. I'm just behind my hands. Okay, you're going to watch a video that's going to show this in class. The next stage is the pre-operational stage. This is the stage where children are developing language and symbolic thinking. So think about 2 years old. Kids are coming up with this idea of language. They are beginning to talk. Remember, we went through those language development stages: the babbling stage, the 2-word stage, the telegraphic stage, right? Like all of those, children are going to go through during this pre-operational stage. Also, Piaget believed that preschool children are egocentric. Basically, this idea is that children at this age cannot see things from another person's point of view. It is not selfishness, okay? Egocentric does not mean someone is selfish. It means that they can only see something from their point of view. Again, you're going to watch a video on this. It'll show you a good example, but here's an example. An egocentric child playing hide and seek may just hide their face against the wall because if they can't see you, then you can't see him, okay? They're unable to take on someone else's perspective. Another example is Bailey right now, when she sits behind me in her car seat, she'll always say, "Mommy, what's that? What's that? What's that?" And she doesn't tell me, she doesn't exactly say what she's pointing at, right? Like, I can't see what she's looking at, but she expects that I'm able to. In the pre-operational stage, kids also lack the concept of conservation. This is the idea that the quantity can remain the same when the shape or other properties change. I just want you to highlight this idea of conservation because it's going to be a lot easier for you to understand when you watch the video in class, okay? So this is the definition, but it's going to be easier for you to understand when you watch the video. So conservation is the knowledge that quantity can remain the same when the shape or other properties change. I promise you'll get it once you watch the video. But an example, a 4-year-old doesn't understand that an 8 ounce of Kool-Aid in a short wide glass is the same as 8 ounces in a tall or skinny glass. Okay, the concrete operational stage. This is our school-age children. This is the ability to think in a more logical manner, right? So they master this idea of conservation. They no longer are egocentric. However, they still need things that are very concrete, right? That's where this name comes from. Concrete operational. They can't think about things that are hypothetical. They need things that are hands-on, in front of them, simple, right? Think about math problems. When you're this age, between 7 and 12 years old, what are you using? You're using those number blocks, right? Those rows of 10, the individual cubes. You're using those in order to actually see a concrete example of a math problem, right? This is why we sometimes use fingers to count, right? Okay, if I have 5 and I take away 2, how many do I have left? It's very concrete. They can see it happening. However, children are able to do transformation math. Basically, it means that they understand that 4 plus 8 equals 12. Therefore, 12 minus 4 equals 8. Okay, so they can get this. Again, though, very concrete. They need to be able to see it. Finally, the last stage that Piaget came up with is the formal operational stage. This is 12 and up. This is your middle school years, right? This is where kids can now understand abstract reasoning, these hypothetical possibilities. Kids also approach problems very systematically, meaning that they are kind of ruling out possibilities as they go. However, people think that this comes during the teenage years, but they feel like what happens is that not everyone actually has fully mastered this stage. Some people, or some research has shown that some people don't actually get this idea of ruling out possibilities. Okay, some people always think of every single possibility. But during the formal operational stage, kids can now think hypothetically about a situation. What would you do in this particular situation? They're not actually there, but they can think about what they would do. Okay, we're going to pause here. We'll come back to social development in part 2.